They don't call it silly season for nothing. Here's Antonio Conte to Sky Sports Italia after Wednesday's 2-2 draw between Chelsea and Arsenal. Quote, "I do not aim high with my requests, especially as in my history I've rarely been given the players I asked for. I always ended up at clubs who were running an austerity program." This, of course, in response to a question about the current transfer window. Gab, please help me make some sense of this. An austerity program at Chelsea? What's Conte aiming at here?
All right. Well, so first of all, I saw this. I saw this footage in its original version, and you know he was kind of half joking when he came out and he said that, and it's in keeping with the theme. You know, he spent 3 seasons at Juventus where he won the league every year, but they were running on a relative shoestring budget. Certainly, they spent a lot more money after he left, and he routinely complained about it. And that's one of the reasons he left. And then it kind of became a bit of a running joke. So that said, you know, he's the kind of manager who is sort of in a permanent state of war and always wants more. And I think he would have wanted to see more spending in the summer. There were certain players, I mean, Alexandro being the obvious one, that he would have wanted. Certainly they were pushing for Lukaku instead of Morata early on, and then they lost out to Manchester United. I don't know if he'd swap them back now, but this is what he does. You know, he's somebody who always wants more because he's above all is his own harshest critic.
So here's a look at the austerity program at Chelsea.
There you go.
First year, well over £100 million, including the reigning Premier League Player of the Year, N'Golo Conte. Of course, brought David Luiz back from PSG. That wasn't cheap. Second year, almost £200 million as they address the back line. And, of course, the $70 million there that you see on Alvaro Morata. Is this just Conte being Conte, Ale, or is this maybe sign of bigger issues at Chelsea?
Well, what's hard to figure out, and let's not forget, this team won the title last season. So you would have thought that the feelings in Chelsea would be a whole lot more positive than they are. But as Gab just alluded to, if you have a manager that is always at war with others and with himself, then it does create this negativity and this friction that I don't think it's necessary. I don't think that if you're a player in the club, you need all this other attention going on. Focus on what you do on the field, focus on your training sessions, focus on the performances, and then the team that you have in hand is good enough to compete. Then go ahead and try to win with that team. When you're thinking about who could be here and who should be here, who isn't here, then you start losing sight of what's important. And what's important is the guys that are inside that locker room.
Go ahead, Gab.
To be fair to Conte, there's a couple of things. I mean, you mentioned the spending. Chelsea also sold players during that period. And if you look at Chelsea's net spend, it's not going to be as high as Manchester United's and Manchester City's. And certainly in the first summer, of course, David Luiz and Marcos Alonso only came in the last 48 hours of the transfer window because they weren't able to sign the guys that they really wanted to sign, people like Koulibaly and whatever else. So I think Conte views it like that. And Conte is still very much wed to the idea of the old style owner benefactor who, you know, falls in love with a team and he's happily cutting checks, a little bit like what Abramovich was like when he first arrived back in 2003, 2004, when you know he spent the moon. Abramovich isn't like that anymore. Chelsea aren't like that anymore. They are running a business. They've got financial fair play regulations to meet as well. They took a big hit, and people often forget this, the year before Conte came, when they finished, 10th under Mourinho, didn't get the Champions League revenue the next year, had to pay off Mourinho. So all these factors together help explain why the spending hasn't been what Conte wants it to be.
It sounds to me like he's saying, hey, I need help. How much help do Chelsea actually need in this window, Shaka?
In this window, let's remember, Chelsea, up until very recently, was sitting second in the table. Now, every single manager wants to spend more money. At the same time, as much as you hear it from managers at the top end of the table, given the amounts they've spent, and we've offered them no kind of respite from that, haven't offered them that as an excuse, I'm not going to start with Antonio Conte now at all. Ali mentioned it. Chelsea were defending champions last season. We started this summer with Antonio Conte getting into a bit of a fight with Diego Costa, and then speculation about his own future. I think that had as much to do with players' uncertainty as to whether they'd move into Stamford Bridge. You're not quite sure who the manager is going to be. You're not quite sure how you're going to be treated if you fall out of favour. You can't just keep throwing money, bad money, to fix bad problems.